Welcome to Fully Booked, the bookish podcast where I'll chat about all things book and reading related. Whether you're a new or a pro reader, there's something for everyone to learn. I'm here to help you on your reading journey and find that next great read that will keep you fully booked. Hello readers, and welcome to episode 19 of Fully Booked. I'm your host Natalie, and today's episode will be my December reading wrap-up. But before we dive into the books I read in the final month of 2024, I wanted to have a disclaimer for the format of these wrap-up episodes going forward. For those of you who have been around, you've probably noticed that I usually have a stats overview that I go through before discussing the book reviews. And I'm able to get those stats from Storygraph. But sadly, I've decided to semi-retire Storygraph, at least for this year, and only use Goodreads and Fable. I just can't keep up with updating all my book reviews and thoughts on 3 different platforms like I was in 2024. And for some reason, I don't like the user interface and aesthetics of Storygraph, even though it does have a lot of great features. And Fable, on the other hand, has so many useful social media features, plus a lot of my book club and other friends have hopped on the Fable bandwagon, which is why I'm deciding to keep it for this year. And I've now updated my Linktree to also include my Fable, so feel free to check it out and add me if you're not yet on Fable, or if you haven't yet added me, come across me, whatnot. And I also post all my reviews on Fable instead of Goodreads, so if you want to get all the initial juicy details on my thoughts. So anyways, to round out 2024, since this episode will be the last wrap-up even though it's already 2025, I'll keep the format the same as the previous episodes because obviously for the month of December, I was still utilizing Storygraph. But as of January, I'll likely be replacing the stats overview with more of my personalized thoughts on how my reading went that month or something or other. I think I'm also trying to figure out how to make my episodes sound more like me, as I realize that sometimes I feel like I'm just reciting information at you all as listeners. I guess it's also just unfortunate for some of you that I clearly just have an obsession with numbers. But yes, definitely want to figure out how to make the episodes and podcasts overall more personalized and honestly fun for you guys to listen to, especially for those who have been here since the beginning or sometimes since last year when I started this podcast. And as usual, I'll stop rambling about these random things and let's move on to what will be the final monthly stats of 2024. So, to start off, I read 13 books total and DNF'd 2 books, which were The Will of the Many and Booked for the Holidays. And if anyone from book club happens to listen, please don't come for me for not finishing The Will of the Many. It was a very hard and personal decision to DNF that book, but that is what ended up happening. Anyways, moving on to the actual stats, my monthly average rating was 3.33 stars, which I believe I mentioned in last week's episode that December had the lowest monthly average rating of the entire year, which is a bit unfortunate. But anyways, in addition, I read a total of 2,345 pages. My average time to finish a book was 5 days. I had 0 hybrid reads, and 3 of the books were read on audio, which were The Best Worst Christmas, The Christmas Star, and Two Can Play. Now, normally, looking at the number of books alone that I was able to complete, this would appear to be a good reading month. However, I feel like I had other reading months where I picked up almost as many books. Like, I think October, November, I ended up picking up quite a few books, and most of the books that I was picking up were pretty good, like at least a 4-star read and a bit above. But considering the number of books that I read this month that were below 4 stars, like even 3 stars, I think I even had 2 books that were below 3 stars. For me, that's just not very good, and obviously that's indicative of the types of books I was picking up, which was to be expected because obviously I wanted to be in my holiday reading era and just pick up as many holiday books as I could, but definitely overall in the coming months, I want to have better reading months with higher monthly average ratings. So hopefully I can do that in the coming months, especially since 2025 has now officially started. So with all that being said, let's just get into the 13 books I read in December. So what I'm going to do next is, instead of going through each book one by one like I normally would, I decided to group several books together that are either by the same author or are in the same series. I figured this would be better to try to save a bit of time and spare all of you, since I read a million holiday books, and no offense, none of them were Goodreads Award or anything worthy enough to merit a full-blown review for each. So, to start off, if you remember from last month's wrap-up, I listened to The Upside Down Christmas by Kate Forster and decided to continue reading two of her backlist titles, starting with The Best Worst Christmas, again, by Kate Forster, which I gave a rating of 3 stars. And also, warning in advance that I'm going to be reading a lot of short Goodreads summaries of these books because I really cannot recall each book and different plot points, so if you asked me to give you a summary off the top of my head right now, I could not do that. So bear with me as I zip through these Goodreads descriptions. So anyways, Best Worst Christmas goes like this. Lily is back from Australia for the first time in 7 years to spend Christmas at her mom's house in a small, gossipy English village. To her surprise, she returns to find that her mother is dating the man next door, who also happens to be the father of her ex-boyfriend Tom. Tom, who broke Lily's heart all those years ago. Tom, the real reason Lily fled to the other side of the world and stayed there. Tom, who is also home for Christmas and right there next door. In what is shaping up to be the worst Christmas ever, somehow Lily and Tom have to try to get along and play happy families. But living with the man who she's clearly not over is proving to be difficult, and tensions are high. Add in some drunken caroling, a reindeer bite, a potent Christmas pudding, and some meddling parents, and Lily's trip home will turn her entire life upside down. And then the next book I read by Kate Forster was The Christmas Star, which I ended up rating 3.25 stars. It's nearly Christmas. Julia Devine's favorite time of the year. I'm not sure how to say her last name. She just programmed a wonderful lead into the holidays at Sunny Street Cinema, which leaves her plenty of time to worry about going home to Cumbria for Christmas. Her mom and stepdad are fine, but the thought of spending another holiday with her awful stepsister Becca is enough to make a Scrooge out of anyone. When Becca calls to let her know about the dreamy pilot she's bringing to Christmas lunch, Julia finally snaps and does something very silly. She tells Becca she's dating heartthrob movie star Hugo Turner. Of course, Julia isn't dating Hugo Turner. She isn't dating anyone. But Becca will never let her live it down if she discovers Julia's lie. Enter Sam Hunter, ordinary guy on the street with a startling resemblance to a movie star. Without any holiday plans of his own, he's the perfect stand-in for the real Hugo. Sam has his own reasons for agreeing to be Julia's sham movie star boyfriend. It's just for one weekend, right? But will this Christmas charade flourish into real Christmas magic? Now, I'm going to be completely honest going into all these reviews. Probably 95% of the books I talk about in this episode, I will have a horrible recollection as, first of all, I waited so long to write reviews for the books that I read in December that I really forgot what finer points happened in each, which is one reason why I really need to stay more on top of preparing and scripting episodes ahead of time before I release them. Also, I read so many Christmas books yet again this year that they all sort of started to blend into one another as time went on. And I remember that's the reason I usually try to read all different genres when I'm reading multiple books at one time, which, if you know already and you've been listening here, that is my usual chaotic way of reading. But anyways, having said that, for these other two Kate Forster titles, all I remember of the first one, The Best Worst Christmas, was that it felt like a slight redo of the Upside Down Christmas, except that I hated the MMC in The Best Worst Christmas. He just had an overall bad attitude that I wasn't rooting for him to get back together with the FMC, as FYI, this was a second chance romance. As for The Christmas Star, I liked it at first, given that fake celebrity, normal person, and fake dating romance isn't something I usually see done in terms of tropes. And I did like both of the mains in this story. However, this one, it felt like there was a lack of conflict and not much happened in the middle most part of the story, and so much so that I quickly grew bored. And honestly, I don't even remember how these two got together in the end of this one. I pretty much audiobooked both of these to pass the time while I was wrapping gifts and also doing other Christmas activities. So I feel like I started to really just tune out after a while. From my overall ratings and feelings reading each, there really isn't one title I would recommend over another from this author. If I had to recommend, maybe it would be the one I read back in November, which was The Upside Down Christmas. That one I just enjoyed a little more for some reason. But either way, they're all super short. They're around 3 to 4 hours each if you're listening to these audiobooks, and definitely a fun and breezy way to pass some time during the holidays, when you have it, that is. Alright, moving on to a Christmas series that I was able to complete in December, which was Amazon's Under the Mistletoe series. And this is a series comprised of 5 different holiday novellas written by 5 different romance authors. Now, if you listened to my November reading wrap-up, which by the way, you can still go back and listen to it if you haven't already. But you will know that I listened to the first book in this series. Did I say listen? Sorry, I meant read. Read the first book in this series in that month, which was Allie Hazelwood's book, which I believe was called Cruel Winter with You, and decided to continue on and complete the rest of the books. Now, I'm going to try and go through each book as quickly as I can and kind of group them together because, let's be honest, there's not that much that I have to say on each individual book in this series. They were honestly just super fun, quick reads. Again, they're novellas, so I think all of them were less than 100 pages. So you could definitely finish this in a day. Less than a day, actually, so to speak. So first off, I read in this series Merry Ever After by Tessa Bailey, which I rated 2.75 stars. I think this one was the lowest rated one for me, and it goes like this. Evie Crow is starting over in a strange town with her newborn, and men are the furthest thing from her mind. If only the quiet, hulking farmer Luke Ward would stop coming into the thrift shop and piquing her reluctant interest. Evie wants to stay single all the way. She can't trust anything more than friends with holiday benefits. But Luke is in it for the long haul. He's fixed on making this a Christmas Evie will remember forever, if she gives him a chance. And then the next book I read in the series, I think I went in order, pretty much, of this series, like the order that they are listed on Amazon, just so you're aware. But anyways, so yes, the next book I read was All by My Elf by Olivia Dade. I'm sorry, these next couple authors, I'm not sure how to pronounce their last names, because I've not heard of them, so please excuse that, which I rated 3 stars. Secret crushes, spicy Christmas treats, heinous holiday traffic, and a fateful snowstorm bring good friends together in a funny, heartfelt short story by bestselling author Olivia Dade. Nina and William are underpaid adjunct professors at the same university where winter break is no break at all. 'Tis the season to make extra money. When their holiday side hustle has them stranded by a blinding blizzard in the middle of nowhere, there's nothing to do but cuddle up for warmth and play a game of Never Have I Ever to pass the time. But in the game of love, secrets never stay secret for long. And then the next book in this series was Merriment and Mayhem by Alexandria Bell Fleur, which I rated 3.5 stars. When Everly Dangerfield's baking disaster necessitates a call to 911, firefighter Griffin Brantley douses the flames in the kitchen. Sorry, I don't know why I'm stumbling over my words so much in this section. Anyways, but the ones he stokes in Everly are an entirely different story. Unfortunately, Everly's only visiting and doesn't do casual hookups, no matter how smoldering the temptation. But Everly's holiday mishaps have just begun, and Griffin is seemingly always on call. If Everly is game for a change of plans, he can give her the merriest Christmas of her life. And the last book in this series was Only Santa's in the Building by Alexis Daria, with a rating of 3.25 stars. All Evie Cruz wants for Christmas is a nap, and maybe some ornaments for her naked Christmas tree. And while she's making a list, she wouldn't mind unwrapping her sexy upstairs neighbor like a present. Luckily, the building's Santa-themed party and a surprise sprig of mistletoe give her just the opening she needs to make all her wishes come true. Something I realized in reading back these summaries just now of the books, and going back through my memory when I read each one, I realized now that a lot of these books had the same premises and tropes used. And I don't really want to give spoilers away, but I'm just gonna, I guess, reveal this one that I remember a lot of them. The FMC was going through grief. And specifically, I think some of them, it was the grandmother that passed away, and it was like their first Christmas on their own without them. And yeah, they were still very sad and grieving, mourning over that death. And I don't know why this is a premise or a trope that kept coming up in these books, especially considering these were all written by different authors. It's almost like, did they all have like a conference or something and get together and plan these books together? Because I don't know why a bunch of them ended up with the same, sort of setup in these stories. That's just like a really random note. Anyways, once again, likewise to the above author that I was talking about, Kate Forster, these books all blended into each other between all the fun holiday banter wordplay and the spice. Because let me tell you, all 5 of these books had more spice than a venti gingerbread latte. So that's a fair warning if you pick any of these up. For me, it's not surprising that, again, the Tessa Bailey one was my least favorite, as I haven't finished a single full-length book of hers. I'm not even sure how I got through her novella Same Time Next Year, because honestly, her books feel very smutty out of all the ones that I've read. And that's something that I've heard about her in general. I will admit that I'm personally a bit confused still as to what is the difference between smut and spice in romance books, since I feel like the lines seem to get blurred nowadays. And a random personal ick for me is constant terms of endearment in romance books instead of like more unique nicknames. That's an ick for me. But especially the use of those terms within the spice and the spice scenes. I think it's usually the choice of terms that bothers me. Like, for example, when the MMC calls her girl. And this actually reminds me how maybe I should do a Book Icks episode at some point, as I've really started to figure out what mine are. But anyways, sorry, I don't want to go off on too many tangents. Going back to this novella series, I wasn't familiar, again, with the rest of the 3 authors, so it makes sense that these ones kind of all ended up being the same rating. I will say, the secret crush on both sides trope does get me a bit more. It's one that I enjoy more personally, which helped me really enjoy All by My Elf and Only Santa's in the Building. However, I also enjoyed Merriment and Mayhem more than I thought I would, as I enjoyed the banter in this one between our 2 mains. And once again, I know I've said it a bunch of times already, I talked about Ali Hazelwood's book in this series. I'm not going to go over it again, but it shouldn't be a surprise that ultimately I enjoyed this one the most out of all 5 of these novellas. Overall, though, for some good romantic holiday fun, and if you don't mind the spice, or if you just want to skip it, Amazon's Under the Mistletoe series was and is a perfect way to stay in and kick back on those cold December nights. Hey readers, I hope you're enjoying the episode so far, and hear me out before you hit skip. I'm so grateful for all my listeners who are with me on this reading journey, and I'd like to ask that if you haven't yet, please leave a rating and review as it helps others find the podcast. Also, please consider supporting the podcast financially as it helps me bring you more exciting content, and you'll get some extras like bonus and subscriber-only episodes, early access to new episodes, and much more. The link to donate will be in the show notes below, or you can go to buymeacoffee.com/fullybookedpod. Thank you so much again for choosing to listen to Fully Booked, and now back to the episode. Alright, moving on from series and books by the same author, the next book I read in December was The Christmas Tree Farm by Laurie Gilmore, which I gave a rating of 3.25 stars. And if you're already wondering and asking, yes, this is another book in the Dream Harbor standalone series. Interconnected standalone series. And it's the 3rd book in the series, which I don't know the order of the books that are coming out afterwards. I've already seen there are already 2 more books coming out. I'm not sure if they're both coming out this year in 2025, but okay, anyways, I'm getting off track. Let's just get into talking about this one. Kira North hates Christmas, which is unfortunate since she just bought a Christmas tree farm in a town that's too cute for its own good. Bennett Ellis is on vacation in Dream Harbor, taking a break from his life in California. And most importantly, taking a break from his latest run of disastrous dates. After a run-in with Kira in her fields, Ben has no intention of offering to help the grumpy owner set up her tree farm, despite the fact that she's clearly got no idea what she's doing. Kira knows she should stop being so stubborn, but her farm is not all cute and cozy like people always show on social media. It's borderline dangerous with no heating, and she'd rather no one saw it. But somehow fate finds Ben at Kira's farm once more, and as Kira watches him swing an axe at the first tree, she finds herself appreciating his strength and questioning why she refused help in the first place. Now, in all likelihood, I would have read this anyways. However, it also happened to be my book club's December pick, which gave me another reason to read and actually finish this one. I admit, I thought the beginning had some progress, at least in terms of the writing style starting to get better, but it ultimately went downhill from there. While there was some attempt at more plot, heavy air quotes on mystery, and giving more background on our two MCs, the book still suffered the same lack of depth as the first two books in this series, which, if you've been listening to the podcast, I have made that obvious by now. Also, this might be a personal thing. I don't like authors that reuse the grumpy sunshine trope over and over again in romance books, or even certain other tropes in general. If the author reuses the same trope book after book in actually the same series or even across all their books, I'm just not really a fan. Which is weird because I don't mind certain ones like Friends or Rivals to Lovers, but there's something especially about the Grumpy Sunshine where each character's demeanor is taken too far or over the top. Yet, for some reason, Grumpy Sunshine seems popular in terms of romance in the book talk community. I still see quite a few Grumpy Sunshine book talk books that are heavily promoted across the community and to readers in general lately. So maybe it's just the overdone popularity of this trope that is starting to annoy me as well. I think those of you who have been following me along reading this series have probably well found out by now how much love-hate I have for it. But of course, if you just want another fairly fun holiday read that requires no thought, then feel free to pick this one up. And also, just one more reminder that this isn't, like I said, an interconnected standalone, which means you can read the previous books in the series, but you don't have to be able to understand the characters in each specific book and their story. Okay, moving onwards and upwards from that last book, the next book I read was How My Neighbor Stole Christmas by Megan Quinn, which ended up rating 3.5 stars. Every Kringle in Kringletown celebrated Christmas a lot, but Coal Black on Whistler Lane, unfortunately, did not. As his fellow citizens decorate their quaint town, brimming with carols and glad tidings, Cole wants nothing more than to hibernate the winter away. But his dreary plans are thwarted when his Christmas nemesis, Storyteller, moves in next door to care for her Aunt Cindy. Immediately, the new neighbor turns his life into a real nightmare before Christmas, especially when she decides to enter the town Christmas Kringle contest in honor of Cindy. And better yet, Story is determined to win. Over Cole's dead body she will. With help from his friend Max, Cole decides to enter the competition as well, to beat Story at her own game, by pretending that this hometown grump's heart has grown 3 sizes this season, and he's fallen for the girl next door. And unfortunately for Story, she has to follow his lead to have a chance at the Christmas Kringle title. But the competition isn't the only thing that heats up. Cole and Story's fake relationship becomes very real, and before they know it, they're attempting to hide it from Aunt Cindy. Things get complicated. The competition gets tough, and all it takes is one single night for someone to steal it all. So if it wasn't obvious from some of the subtle references in that summary, this is a holiday romance with a modern twist, and that is very loosely based on How the Grinch Stole Christmas. Not gonna lie, I felt this book was cheesy with all the over-the-top rhyming and names and references used. However, I felt like that was also kind of the point of this book, and Megan Quinn also knew that as she was writing/narrating this story. Besides the romance, there were lots of laugh-out-loud scenes that honestly had the makings of being in a modern holiday movie. Also, I didn't really like the beginning part where the grumpiness and their hate towards each other was emphasized. But as the story went on, I grew to love Cole and Story and the rest of the town. I think my biggest criticisms of this holiday book were that it was just too long for me because it was almost 500 pages. And also the spice was a bit too much for me in the later part of this book, which, yeah, those two factors are the ones that mainly contributed to giving this a little bit of a lower rating. Otherwise, I enjoyed this a bit more than I thought I would, and it seems that after reading this, so they say, my holiday spirit grew and grew to 3 sizes that day. Okay, that wasn't the best rhyme at all, but I just had to try. And now I recommend that you all go and buy this book. Yeah, rhyming is hard. I gotta give it to Megan Quinn now for all the rhymes that she did come up with in this book. And I'll spare your ears and stop with the rhyming now. Alright, moving on to an even better book. I read The Answer is No by Friedrich Bachmann with a rating of 3.75 stars. Lucas knows the perfect night entails just 3 things: video games, wine, and pad thai. Peanuts are a must. Other people, not so much. Why complicate things when he's happy alone? Then one day, the apartment board, a vexing trio of authority, rings his doorbell. And Lucas's solitude takes a startling hike. They demand to see his frying pan. Someone left one next to the recycling room overnight, and instead of removing the errant object as Lucas suggests, they insist on finding the guilty party. But their plan backfires. Colossally. Told in Friedrich Bachmann's singular, witty style with sharply drawn characters and reliable antics, The Answer is No is a laugh-out-loud portrait of a man struggling to keep to himself in a world that won't leave him alone. I realized as I was reading this book that so far I've only picked up Friedrich Bachmann's short stories, and needless to say that I need to pick up one of his full-length novels ASAP, which is a good thing that I put Beartown on my winter TBR, and hopefully I'll pick that one up very, very soon. But anyways, this story definitely had its own charm and wit, and I can already tell that I like his writing style, even just from reading the short stories. And I know that a lot of people aren't a big fan of third-person narrative, but when done right, it can be really good. I like the bits of realistic humor that he inserts in his characters' inner thoughts, dialogue, and just the storyline overall. And there's definitely subtle but interesting commentary on normal life and living or coexisting together in society that you can take away from reading this book, which I certainly did. So overall, this is an ordinary yet delightful short story that I would recommend if you are a fan of Friedrich Bachmann, or just if you like stories that paint a picture of the relatable struggles of everyday life. And finally, the last book that I read in December, which unfortunately is going to take us now on a downward trend to end off the month, is Two Can Play by Allie Hazelwood, which I rated 2.5 stars, which is not very good at all, if you know me. Okay. Viola Bowen has a chance of a lifetime to design a video game based on her all-time favorite book series. The only problem? Her co-lead is Jesse effing Andrews, aka her arch-nemesis. I hope that doesn't count as explicit language, because I usually try to keep these non-explicit. Anyways, Jesse has made it abundantly clear over the years that he wants nothing to do with her, and Viola has no idea why. When their bosses insist a wintry retreat is the perfect team-building exercise, Viola can't think of anything worse. Being freezing cold in a remote mountain lodge, knowing Jesse is right next door? No thank you. But as the snow piles on, Viola discovers there's more to Jesse than she knew, and heat builds in more ways than one. Honestly, I don't even have words to describe this one, and this book was definitely one of my flop reads of the year, which is very disappointing as it's Allie Hazelwood, need I say more? It had a perfectly wintry setting and fun premise of the video game design, and not to mention, this book ended up being book number 100 of 2024 for me. I was kind of shocked that I even finished this, and I think the only reason I did was because it was so short and all on audio. And the fact that, as I got near the end, I knew this was going to be the 100th book of the year, and I wanted to just reach that marker. And FYI, so far, as far as I know, this book is only available as an audiobook. So if you're you are looking around for this one, just know that you'll have to look on Audible, Spotify, and for myself, I listened to this one on Everand, but yeah, mainly those platforms if you're looking for this book. But anyway, so far, I've loved Ali Hazelwood's books, and hers an offer overall in terms of the diversity in her writing. But I would honestly tell you all that this book is one that can be skipped. I swear I'm not even sure what happened in this story, and while I understand that there's only so much you can get across in a short amount of pages/time, I had zero interest in our two MCs as individuals and as a couple, and I'm still confused how they even got together or why they got together in this story. Yeah, I don't know. There was just nothing original or inspiring about this book. I'm hoping this was just a one-off and Ali Hazelwood comes back with a bang with her next release because this one was not it for me. And that concludes what I read in December and my last month of reading in 2024. Some of you probably found this episode a bit too holly-jolly, but hopefully you still enjoyed listening. I will admit that I hope I have some more highly rated books in the months to come, as it's just extremely hard to find a 4-star or above holiday read. So a lot of the books this past month ended up being a bit meh, which was also fine with me since my holiday season had its ups and downs in terms of busyness. So, needless to say, I'm definitely looking forward to a lot of my reads planned for the coming months, and maybe even finding more 5-star reads this year. But anyways, I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you back here for episode 20. Thank you for listening to today's episode. I hope you were able to take away something, and be sure to follow the podcast for more bookish content. Until next time, stay fully booked, and I'll talk to you soon.